Honey, look at those beautiful clouds.
Those aren't clouds, Daddy. Those are chemtrails.
Chemtrails? What are chemtrails?
Chemical trails, Daddy, and they're very bad.
I look up to the sky. Can you tell me why? Can you tell me why? I don't wanna see you cry. I just wanna see you smile, baby. I look up to the sky. Can you tell me why? Can you tell me why? I don't wanna see you die. I just wanna see you smile, baby. Me look up in the sky and me can't see clear. Blue skies are gold and white. Lines up here, them say it's natural. Me now we live them. Them say it's vital. Me now listen to them. Something strange is going on. Feel it in my heart, sensing something strong. Gotta save the future, put the rumors to rest. Gotta help the children and give it the best can. Stand around and be blind to the frost can. Taking no more, how can they relax? I look up to the sky. Can you tell me why? Can you tell me why? I don't wanna see you cry. I just wanna see you smile, baby. I look up to the sky. Can you tell me why? Can you tell me why? I don't wanna see you die. I just wanna see you smile, baby. Living on earth, we must respect the earth. Human and animal, we all deserve the right to peace and opportunity. But nowadays we are blind, we can't see.
Hi, this is Dane Wigington with GeoEngineeringWatch.org radio for the week of June 28th, 2014. Things are continuing to accelerate on too many fronts to really effectively be able to outline. But here's what's most interesting, and I'll go into some fine points in a moment. We have also Russ Tanner with us today. We have Greg Palin with us today, also former congressional candidate from Georgia. Greg's been with us before, but he's been in the fight for a long time, brings a lot to the table. We'll get to Greg in a moment. The normalcy bias in the U.S. is astounding. The society here has been shielded from reality for so long. Most don't even know what it is, nor do they seem to care. As long as they're comfortable in their bubble, they will remain there for as long as possible. But I would argue that bubble is being popped by the day now. Definition of normalcy bias, most know what it is, but just to be clear, the normalcy bias condition is well known to psychologists and sociologists. It refers to a mental state of denial in which individuals enter into when facing a disaster or pending danger. Normalcy bias leads people to underestimate and minimize both the possibility of catastrophe actually happening as well as its possible consequences to their health and safety. The normalcy bias often results in situations where people fail to prepare for a likely and impending disaster. The normalcy bias leads people to believe that since something has never happened before, that it will never happen. Therefore, like an infant with a security blanket, we cling to our habitual, repetitive, and normal way of life, despite overwhelming proof that serious danger lies ahead. This is exactly what we have in the United States, and I'm sure all of us know many people around us, even family members, that are completely immersed in normalcy bias. But this facade will not be able to be maintained for much longer, and it will shatter with blinding speed soon. We face converging catastrophes, in the words of James Kunstler, from a collapse of the former global reserve currency, the U.S. dollar, which is pending. I'll get to that in a moment. We have a biosphere that is completely imploding, and it's truly astounding how many people that I know and in contact with and see the writings of that can't bring themselves to acknowledge this, that somehow everything that's happening must be natural or normal, that there's nothing unusual going on. And even with a planet that's in total collapse, in total meltdown, we still see this. And it's about as normal or natural. If it's like saying, an example I've used before, if someone's walking across the street and gets run over by a semi, would be like saying, well, no, they just died naturally. They had a heart attack a millisecond before the truck ran them over. Are we really to believe that? Are we really to believe that in all of Earth's history, never has biosphere changes occurred at this rate that we see right now? Never, ever has the planet die-off occurred at such a rate as we see right now. Never has the planet warmed at the rate we see right now, not even close. We're talking about perhaps hundreds of times faster rate than at any previous time. And we're to believe that this is just a coincidence? This is total denial. So why does it matter? Why does it matter for people to understand what's happening with the planet, especially with anti-geoengineering activists? Why does it matter? It matters, one, because it's important that we have credibility with our cause. And two, it's important because people need to understand climate engineering has helped this to happen. It's important they understand that. Yes, it's poisoning us. Yes, it will, aside from any climate changes, it will eventually kill us from simply the exposure to the toxins. But even without the exposure to the toxins, it will very soon be our end from the biosphere changes. So both edges of the sword are equally lethal, and people need to understand this. So as the climate engineers have so effectively cooled the eastern U.S., so effectively, and it has rooted so many people in an extremely narrow field of vision. It's cold outside their house, so therefore the whole planet is cold. This is nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. And so many people are stuck in this paradigm, or they hate Al Gore. And again, I don't like Al Gore either. But they can't seem to bring themselves to connect the dots, and I hope they do, because it would gain us credibility with the cause. It would help us to unite with academia, who's also horribly in denial in regard to climate engineering. It's important people be standing on common ground that's verifiable and accurate. So this is why it matters. It does matter. And I hope everybody does research, because for those who don't research the true state of the climate, they are just as guilty as those who do not research climate engineering. No difference. So again, climate engineering has helped to bring us to this point of planetary meltdown. It is certainly not going to cure it. And even though they can cure a part of the U.S., which they're doing, in fact, the whole lower 48 is 1.5% of the surface area of the planet, 1.5%. So therefore, the eastern half of the U.S. is less than, it's about 1/2 of 1% of the surface area of the Earth. Does that really give us a picture of the whole Earth? Absolutely not. So we see with thermal expansion, and this is happening right now, it causes seismic activity, massive, and again, in regard to, also in addition to the ionosphere heaters like HAARP and so forth that are also triggering quakes, and we can't delineate what's causing what completely. There's too many factors involved. You can't say it's this or that, and too many people do that as well. It's either this or that. They think dichotomously. In so many cases, it's not this or that. It's this, that, and 100 other things. We need to think out of the box. We need to look at the whole picture. So we had a massive earthquake in the Aleutian Islands. Why is this bad? Because everywhere there's quakes now, it's helping to destabilize methane hydrate on the sea floor. Methane is spewing all over the Arctic, flooding the atmosphere it's covering the planet like a layer of gas. What's happening in Siberia? Something our media says nothing about. I'll read a headline right now. Dozens of monstrous fires belch a 1,200-mile plume of dark smoke over central Siberia. And this headline continues. This winter, temperatures throughout large swaths of this typically frigid land of tundra and boreal forest range between 5 and 7 degrees Celsius above average. That's about 10 to 14 degrees above average Fahrenheit. Okay, for brief periods, spikes in the very extreme range of 20 degrees Celsius warmer than normal were not uncommon. That's 40 degrees above normal. It's astronomically hot in places of the planet right now. Again, only the eastern U.S. is being heavily geoengineered to completely bamboozle people. It looks like a major geoengineering event coming up in about a week, a summer polar vortex. How about that? The geoengineers will not stop at their attempt to keep certain regions of the planet cool, to keep the situation confused, to keep people confused, and to demonstrate the power they have, at least over a very small area in comparison to the whole globe, to cool things down at the cost of making the overall warming worse. The unusual heat continued into spring. This is in regard to Siberia still, igniting a mass of anomalous wildfires in April, a time when most of Siberia remains frozen, but in May, more than 1 million acres had burned, well before the typical peak of fire season. Normally this region is frozen solid till middle of June. A few other fun facts that are missed or completely lied about at this point. Again, why does it matter? Because it matters that we understand geoengineering is causing our planet to go into full-blown meltdown, Venus syndrome. 2014, warmest spring on record. This is historical fact. And I don't like these agencies either. I don't like NOAA and NASA, but the bottom line is the temperatures on the ground are being falsified to the downside, not the upside, so the actual records are even worse than what I'm stating. 2014 warmest spring on record, 351 consecutive months of above normal global temperatures now in a row. Anybody who thinks that that's just naturally occurred right now is really in denial. There's no other word for it. 38 years in a row of above normal global temperatures. These are hard facts. I challenge anybody to dispute them. Record-shattering ocean temperatures, 90-plus degrees in early May, 90-plus degrees off the coast of Mexico, western coast. This is astoundingly warm ocean temperatures, and every cubic meter of seawater can hold 4,000 times the thermal energy of a cubic meter of air. The ocean temps are all that matters. The ocean temps have been absorbing the warming for a very long time, but now they can't hold anymore. If you put ice in a pan and put it on fire, that water will stay cool until that ice melts. It will keep that water cool. Once the ice is gone, the temperatures skyrocket. It's no different. The planet is no different. This massive amount of ice that's been in the planet has helped to buffer what's been happening. And geoengineering, again, making the situation far worse. So it's important people have a basic understanding of what's going on so that we're on credible, solid ground so that we can eventually, hopefully, unite with academia, who's also in total denial about geoengineering. Methane release is accelerating. Fish die-offs accelerating. Again, as the ocean's warm, it causes gassing from the seafloor, CH4, which is methane, hydrogen sulfide, deoxygenates the water, fish die. Also, the water is warming, which means it carries less oxygen as well. I went to the woods this week for about 36 hours to survey tree mortality and fish mortality. This is in Northern California. The tree mortality is horrific. The trees that are alive are barely alive. They're dying by the day. Our forest here is finished if something doesn't change radically. This is a forest that has historically thrived with up to 100 inches of rain a year. Huge fir trees. I mean huge. They look like redwoods, some of them 230 or 40 feet high, and trunks that are 8-9 feet thick. They're gigantic, and they're dying by the day. I also looked at fish die-off. I've been diving my entire life. I've dove all over the globe. I was a free diver for many years, and I looked everywhere. In the major trout tributary here, I dove under every major turbulent zone where trout usually reside. I found none. I found not one trout. I'm not saying there's none there, but I found none. The waters are warm. It's not conducive to supporting trout anymore. So we also see, this is what causes people to remain in their normalcy bias. We see certain facts and figures, whether it's from Wall Street to some energy proposal like this one. It says, roadmap for repowering California for all purposes with wind, water, and sunlight, referring to a goal in 2050. On the track we're on, by 2050, there will be no life left anywhere on the planet. This is a mathematical reality if we stay on this track. So when people see these long-range dates, it tends to make them think, oh, well, everything can't be that bad because these agencies that supposedly have everything all figured out are looking at these target dates, 40 years out. It's absolute, utterly false projections and predictions. Again, on the track we're on, life on Earth will be literally mathematically gone on this current trajectory if we don't change course. U.S. policing the world. And this is in regard to everything I've just spoke about, environmental implosion. All of it's coming together very rapidly. This puts pressure on countries, political systems around the globe. It all comes down to resources. And when people think the U.S. is, quote, policing the world, that is absolute nonsense. It has nothing to do with policing anybody. It has to do with looting, pillaging, and stealing resources for, quote, American interests. What does American interest mean? It simply means what we want, we will take. That's what it means. It's what it's always meant. And we come up with terms like homeland security. It's just like Nazi Germany when they referred to the homeland to make people think they're part of some elite club that's above everybody else. The people need to break their mindset. So the rest of the world is ready to help this happen. They've had enough. They've had enough of the empire. So here's another headline. 133 G77 nations vow to destroy America's New World Order. June 17, 2014, Bolivia. The American and European media are doing everything they can to black this news out. Why? Of course, this is my commentary, but of course they do not want the American public to understand that their world is about to go upside down. The headline continues, but it's not going to stay a secret for long. As of this week, there's a new world order on Earth, and its enemy is the United States, the EU, and the UN Security Council, and the world's shadow government led by the IMF and the WTO. This new alliance of 4 countries wouldn't be much of a threat, except it includes 2/3 of the world's nations, including China and India. It's a sad day for the American people when their government and state-sponsored news industry blacks out such an important news story. Americans actually have to rely on outlets like Havana Times in Cuba, the Times of India, the United Nations press releases. There's a reason this news is being censored across the West, and it's only the latest global news story over the past 2 weeks on this subject blacked out from the American people. The planet's, in so many ways, it's unraveling. We have 36 or so countries around the globe descending into total chaos. We have massive record flooding in so many areas right now you can't keep up. We have record drought, record heat, and record fires in other areas. Geoengineering disrupting the entire picture. We have fish stocks 95% depleted now. 95? How long can that go on? We are at the verge of a totally different reality. All this being said, now is the time we all find out what we're made of, where we decide what we were going to use our time for each and every day. So I hope people choose to focus on the common good. Join us in the march to expose climate engineering. It's the single greatest step we could take in the right direction to allow the planet's life support systems to continue. With that, Russ, I know I covered a lot of data there. I know where you're at. It's cooler, I think, or at least not right now. You're in Florida, but back home in New Jersey, it's cooler, I believe, right? And curious of your take on the unraveling we're all surrounded by.
Yeah, I think it's a little more cool than usual in the place where I usually am at. Nevertheless, wherever.
New Jersey, right? You're in New Jersey. I mean, not New Jersey. I mean Philadelphia.
Yeah, Philadelphia.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
So I mean, we're just having, and of course, you know, you have showed me many times how they split the jet stream, and they are, you know, you have record highs in the west, you have differential in the east, and all of that kind of going on.
And I hope that people actually look, and I don't want anybody to take my word for it. Look at some of the global temperature maps. It will slap you in the face. There's a cold spot in the western North American continent, and the rest of the planet is bright red. And you can see where the geoengineering is being focused so clearly, but it is confusing to people, right, Russ? I mean, you have people around you that think probably the whole planet's cold, right?
Yeah, I mean, people only know what they see where they live, I think, at the immediate time, but the maps that you have show how the geoengineering is really manipulating the temperatures and the jet stream, probably in conjunction with HAARP. And and the other thing I wanted to say about, in response to what you were saying about the news media, is a lot of people say the news media is compliant, but, you know, when you really look at it in great detail, you find out the news media is owned by the large industry, many of which are military contractors. So really, I call it control. Just a small, you know, just a difference in word, but rather than being compliant, I look at it as controlled, and that's why people don't hear these stories. And I've seen this in the health industry over and over and over again. You have big news announced. You have DCA, a cure for cancer that comes out of Canada, and nobody in the United States, including news media, is interested in the story. And
there you go. So people in the U.S. think, well, I didn't see it on CNN, so it must not be true, right? Well, how about on the lying? I think Greg Palin knows a lot about lying, you know, what it's like in the political arenas because he was there. He was trying to bring some truth into that arena. And I think he had quite a few assaults in that regard. Greg, you there?
Yes, I am, Dane.
And what was that like, my friend, when you were trying to bring some rational and accurate perspective into the political arena? How well was that received?
Well, I can definitely say it was very depressing. There's no such thing as a debate anymore. When you run for Congress, you get a minute or 2 minutes. They call them political forums, actually. There are no debates. You get a minute, maybe 2 minutes to make your point. You can't go into a subject like geoengineering and describe it accurately and succinctly in a minute or 2 minutes without people thinking you're a bit crazy. you can't go into the detail that you need to go into to get people to see the light. And they know that, and that's why they make the answers or the response time so short. They control the agenda. Every talking point is extremely controlled, and you would never be asked a question about the environment or geoengineering, or it's all jobs, economy, and jobs and economy and education.
And all of which, I want you to continue. I want you to continue with your thought. Well, you mentioned jobs, economy, education, none of which will matter soon in our paradigm. None of which. When the planet doesn't support life, none of those things have any relevance whatsoever. And this is completely omitted from the mindset of most of the global population, especially the American population. But anyway, continue. In those short sound bites, yeah, certainly they do not want you to have enough time to even begin to truly address such issues, right?
No, I can't say, but maybe once did I really have the time to address geoengineering in a forum, and that was more of a libertarian-type forum and radio interview where I actually could address the topic. It was still a limited amount of time, but I definitely did bring it up. But, part of it is everybody's going along to get along. Even the few guys that are honest, that want to make change, they're afraid to address the topic because they think that they won't get elected if they address the topic, and I just think it's too late for that. We have to address it. We have to talk about it. And that's one point I really wanted to make is, even within my own family, my brother's a former fighter pilot. He's had the military brainwashing telling me that, we need to respect Obama. We need to respect the presidency. I have no problem with respecting the presidency, but I don't have to respect Obama. But, he's, fairly high-level military, captain in the Navy, show pilot for the West Coast, and totally brainwashed and tells me I have to respect Obama. And I think I told you, Dane, I'm not going to repeat it again, what I had to say to him, Unfortunately, brothers fought brothers during the Civil War over ideologies, and I hope it doesn't come to that again, but it appears that my
contrast. I want to give just so the listeners have a little more idea about you, Greg, that the effort that you've gone to, the contrast between what you just described about your own brother, and I respect you for being so open about that, and what you have actually done. And for those that don't know, Greg has paid for out of his own pocket a lot of things that are helping our cause directly. And this goes back a long ways to billboards. I don't know, what you put up, a half a dozen billboards, Greg, something like that? Related to geoengineering?
About 3 years ago, yeah, I was aggravated. I was sick of seeing it. I knew what they were doing because I originally I'm not going to make this story too long, but it's interesting how people awaken and they start to question things. And I originally started to question because I got involved in silver, and I found out that the government, most definitely, I can prove this, manipulates the gold and silver price. And then that led to the CDC, and it led to the CFTC, and the FDA, and the EPA, and they're all corrupt, And it caused me, and then it was so obvious because I love to fish, I love to hunt, so I'm out fishing. Years past, I would try to fish as much as I could, and I'm looking at these skies over the lake, and it's just like, this is not even close to being normal. And somebody like my brother would say, well, that's what I see every day. As a pilot, he tells me, well, that's what I see every day. That's a crock of you-know-what. And so I put up billboards on I-20 here in Atlanta, just trying to wake people up. And we've been doing that, as you well know, because you've been involved in it with George Barnes, putting up billboards here in Atlanta. And we've been scouting new sites and maybe starting to get a little bit stronger with our messages. And but I just don't think we have a lot of time. I'm with you,
We don't have a lot of time.
But I think it's important. Every time I get on your show, Dane, it's so important. I want to say it again. Because I try to make myself do this. Even just yesterday, I was picking up some wood up here in the mountains, one of my vendors, and met two new guys and gave them both your videos, both of these guys a couple videos and about 10 brochures. And then I went to dinner, and I gave everybody out at the restaurant one of your brochures. And I think it's just so important. I own my own company. I'm the CEO of my company. I'm the boss there, I guess. But it's important to know when you need to be a soldier, and I am more than willing, because I know what a fantastic job you're doing, that we need to be soldiers. We need to help you, help ourselves. You know, I mean, it comes down to self-preservation. Be selfish. Want to live. You know, that's what I don't understand. You know.
On that note, I want to make known, if I may, Greg, that for a lot of people that, you know, we're able at GeoEngineering Watch to mail out flyers and videos to a lot of people without charge, and part of the reason we can do that is because of people like you, Greg, who have helped pay for those videos and those flyers so that we can mail them to activists that otherwise couldn't afford them. So, again, I'm immensely grateful to you for all you've done for the cause. You've not just talked it, but you've walked it. And again, if we had more like you, we'd be further along in the battle. But I feel immense gratitude toward you and all you've done to help the situation. And as you said earlier, Greg, what you encountered, so many people in the system, political system, don't want to rock the boat. They're worried about their political career. So while we're all not rocking the boat is going to the bottom of the sea. And that's exactly the scenario we have. We're all up to our knees in water on the deck of the Titanic right now. And again, we have to focus on an issue, and that issue has to be climate engineering. If the planet can't support jobs, economy, nothing else matters. Nothing else matters.
Yeah, we're still fighting the left-right paradigm. You know, I remember when I did my televised GPTV interview, you know, they were trying to sink my ship. I mean, it was amazing the questions they were asking me, like trying to paint me as a libertarian, like that really mattered. I call myself a liberty-minded Republican. I believe in the Republican principles, and I'm liberty-minded, but they were trying to paint me as a libertarian, and like a libertarian's a bad thing, you know? It's just, the paradigm needs to change to life and death as opposed to Republican-Democrat, you know?
Well, we're experiencing right now what you described, the political system. Now, we have a meeting that's coming up in Shasta County, July 15th, and we've tried to get an agenda item for the Air Quality Board. They will not even return the calls or emails from multiple parties, even with inquiries that we are trying to get a 10-minute to 15-minute spot for the CEO of the third largest environmental consulting firm in the country, one of the largest on the globe, Matthew Sutton. He's a friend. He's showing tremendous courage by being willing to speak out, and we can't even get these local bureaucrats to even return a phone call. So what are we doing? We have the public right to show up at that meeting, and every citizen of the county has 3 minutes at the mic. And so we're gonna try to keep this dialogue going until they shut that meeting down, and we're going to film it, YouTube it, and you know, it's gone long enough that we have local bureaucrats that think they are not beholden to anyone, that do whatever they want, that think they're towing the line to help their political career, while the entire ship again goes to the bottom, which we are very close to, by the way. Again, I hope people actually investigate data. Don't believe me or any other source. You know, people need to investigate for their own, but we're encountering the same sort of stuff here that you described right now with our local quote-unquote officials.
Yeah, Dan, the thing that these bureaucrats need to remember is that under U.S. law, they're equally responsible for the outcome or for the devastation that takes place legally. So I think they need to keep this in mind. What do you think?
We are. That's where we're going to have 3 different people filming there. And again, our point is this. We know that they do not have the jurisdiction to stop the spraying. We know that. We're not asking that. We never asked that. I managed to get in front of the board 6 years ago, and they've never done anything since. They've ducked this issue completely. But they are mandated to disclose to their citizens a verifiable, inarguable contamination issue, heavy metal contamination issue, period. Can't be argued. Also, lethal UV radiation levels, so much so that it's burning the bark off of trees. Trees are defoliating, dead branches are everywhere. I mean, our ecosystems are imploding. And again, when I can dive out, the river that I was in looking for trout, again, you know, diving under the rapids and the turbulent areas and looking everywhere for trout, it looks like the river looks like you're in Tibet. I mean, it's a very large river. It's the main tributary for the Sacramento. And when you can't find a single trout in that kind of environment, things are horribly wrong. And this is happening right now. So anyway, we'll film this, YouTube it, get it out to everyone. Russ, can you give the call-in number?
Yeah, absolutely. For anybody who wants to call in, call 718-718-7233. 717-8296. That's 718-717-8296, and you'll come right in through Skype. So just dial that number.
So we see, Greg, I think it's heating up where you're at, right?
Definitely. We've seen some pretty unseasonal temperatures here. We've been up to something 96 at the end of the week.
Now, curious again, as we
pretty
talked
darn hot.
Off the air, you and I talked about this off the air. I would be grateful if you can keep an eye on the difference between the official high temperature for the day and what you believe the high temperature actually was based on your own thermometer. And you don't have to keep records, but just an idea of the running difference. Is it 2 or 3 degrees? Here in Northern California, we very typically see a 3 and 4 and even 5 degree underreporting of the actual high temperature. So if they show 110, it's 113 or 14 or even 115. Radical underreporting of the temperatures because they are trying desperately to hide till the last minute the magnitude of meltdown that we all face. I mean, and again, the effect on everything here, very few insects, so that's back to the fish. The fish have nothing to eat. Water's way warmer than it should be, less oxygen in the water. I mean, everything is tied to everything else. But, and I know again, north of you, they're expecting another cool down, but those cool down areas are becoming smaller and smaller as they have less and less cold air to push around and to work with. But we see the record flooding, as we see now in parts of the northern tier states. While we have, our drought here is beyond comprehension. I mean, it is like a dust bowl here in California. So this, again, so many roads lead back to GeoEngineering.
Dane, do we still have you on?
Yeah, I lost you there for about a minute, Dane, and now I got you back, a minute or two, actually.
Actually, this is Russ. Looks like we lost our connection with Dane. Let me get Dane back here. This is something that happens once in a while. So let me see.
Yeah, maybe the NSA is on to us, huh?
Yeah, my drive down here, we drove right past the building. It was kind of interesting. But let me see if I can get Dane back. Dane, I just lost your connection, but you're back on now.
Okay, did you guys go off too?
Yeah.
Was everybody off?
For a few seconds, yeah, but we're back together.
Okay, but did that was that something you know what the cause of was, Russ? I'm just asking because whether.
No, it wasn't a problem on this end. No.
Okay, because that's now 9 out of the last 10 radio shows I've done. Just a big cutoff midair. So
yeah, that should be a pretty good indication to the general public that they might want to listen to us, Dave.
Well, yeah, as they say, if you're over the target, you're getting flack, I suppose. And 9 out of 10 would be a pretty astounding coincidence if it happened that many times in a row. But as I was finishing up, and Greg, you can chime in from there. But I'm not sure how much of that tape. But the bottom line is.
Hello.
Well, we do have a caller on, but caller, hold on just a minute, and we'll take you a minute there.
I'll get right to that. But
yep.
The degree of unraveling right now, people need to understand, extremely non-linear. Don't look back over the last 10 years and think, well, it's taken this long to get here, so we have that much in front of us. Non-linear equation. You jump off a 100-story building, it feels like you're flying until you hit the concrete. But the ride's about to end. So, Russ, you can go ahead with that caller.
Oh, yeah, caller, welcome to GeoEngineering Watch Radio. How are you doing?
Who are we speaking with?
Oh, my name's Joe.
Hi, Joe.
Okay,
glad to have you on.
So
What's your question?
Okay, my question is, have you tried the quantum physics approach?
Which is? I'm familiar with quantum physics, but I don't understand the nature of the question.
Okay. Well, there is a fellow online. His name is Karma Singh, Signh, and he has a newsletter dated July 6, 2013, that talks about it. And what it basically is you use a vision of disconnecting HARP with the chemtrails, and then after that you visualize microbes in the air feeding on the chemtrails and then converting them into nutrients, and then being thankful for the whole thing and letting the people that do the chemtrails land safely and then have the planes and equipment disintegrate.
I think this would more be put in the metaphysical realm here, and I'm not against people meditating and having positive thoughts and visions. I'm not against that, certainly, but at the same time, the rubber has to be put to the road. And I wouldn't put this in the category of quantum physics, but again, more metaphysical. But in addition to trying to have meditation on what needs to happen, which is important, it's just as important. The rubber must be put to the road, and I know a lot of people who don't want to do that. They want to sit somewhere under whatever tree they can find that's still alive and try to approach it from only a meditation standpoint, and that's not going to get the job done. We have to actually take action as well. So, again, your point is well taken, but at the same time, I hope people realize that we must every single day, every single one of us, find ways to move the ball forward, to get the word out, to wake others up, because others can't meditate or march in the fight in a more tangible way. They can't do any of that if they don't even know about this issue, and they're not going to know if we're sitting under a tree meditating. So we have to approach it from all angles.
I agree. I think the biggest thing is letting people know about the situation, what's going on. A lot of people just don't believe it, but I tell people all the time about it.
And do it effectively.
Watch the chemtrails, because they don't believe it. I say watch them and watch what happens to the chemtrails after they're laid. You know, they turn into cloud cover.
That's good you're doing that. I want to express again the importance of using the science terms. I just saw this big event in Arizona, which I'm grateful to everybody who went and those who helped organize it. But if one looks at the headlines and the story that ensued in the major newspaper there, the words climate engineering and geoengineering were not used once, at least not in the headline I saw. Not once.
I do realize that, because you have been stressing that.
And again, I'm not, certainly the term chemtrails is more descriptive. I don't argue that. But the bottom line is, if we're going to play in a game that they have structured, we have to do it in a way that's effective against them. And this is how we do it, by using the correct terms that cannot be marginalized, that cannot be thrown out as conspiracy theory, that aren't recognized. So semantics do matter, but your point's well taken, caller. Thank you very much for the input.
Okay, thank you.
Russ, again, you guys may know people in your world as well that I certainly do in mine, that they don't want to actually engage. They want to again, meditate on the issue. And I although I believe that that's important, I do. I'm not negating that at all. But I'm saying we have to use that meditation time to help also formulate what we're going to actually physically do to move the ball forward, direct action.
I absolutely agree. And I think I have found that I believe that some of the shills that are working for the government actually are trying to convince people, encourage people to do nothing but visualize and do these types of things. And what it does is it really works against the cause of waking up the public. We need to get out there and notify people and tell them to do what George Barnes says, tell them to look up so they can see what's going on, and also understand that these high bypass turbofans do not create trails. They don't create trails. So what's coming out of these things? So,
and on that point, and I want to follow up and back you up on that too. It's so critically important. So many people in our movement right now are still not clear on that. Exactly what you just said. That the notion that a lot of what we see is just condensation trails is not accurate. It's not true. And I hope people watch the high bypass turbofan jet engine tutorial on your side, I think, and on GeoEngineering Watch as well, that they understand that with very few exceptions, again, exceptions that only would occur in the most extreme conditions, middle of winter, highest altitude, and the shortest-lived, almost transparent trail, except for that, everything else we see is particulate disbursement. Even these short, bright trails are still particulate disbursement. We know this because we have films of these short, bright trails being turned on and off. And we see them, I see them over Northern California with temperatures on the ground 110 degrees, jets flying extremely low altitude, 18, 19,000 feet, spewing these massive trails. It cannot be condensation. It's not even remotely in the realm of being possible. And at the same time, in the middle of winter, we see jets at the highest altitudes leaving virtually nothing. So, again, we know simply from the high bypass turbofan jet engine, which, thank you for bringing up again, 80% of the air that passes through that engine non-combusted. They're not, by design, they're not conducive to making a condensation of trail of any type. And you've done a lot of research on that, yeah?
I've done a lot of research on that. And the only trails that I've watched the sky my entire life. I grew up in the Tampa Bay area, which is one of the most busy airspaces in the world. And I've watched the sky my life. I've never seen a trail come out of a high bypass turbofan. And a lot of the arguments that the shills try to use to say, oh, well, they really do create trails, is they show you a few photographs from the 50s of a few jets spewing trails, and they say that there is a patent that was developed to suppress jet engine dispersal of trails or creation of trails in wartime so that you couldn't track the jets in the sky. But the problem is that patent does not apply to high bypass turbofans. That patent was for jet engines and for low bypass turbofans, which have more potential for creating trails, even though it would still be more rare. There's just a lot of disinformation out there. The bottom line is, in all of my life, I've never seen those type of trails, engines create trails. And furthermore, as somebody who can smell and taste it, I would have to say to these people, I have now since 2005 seen when they spray these at low altitudes that anywhere from half an hour to a few hours later, we start having a metallic taste in the air that some people, more sensitive people, can detect. And this has been 100% consistent over and over. And that's not even mentioning the collection of rainwater that has everything from lead and cadmium and aluminum and mercury and other things that are showing up everywhere we see the spraying. So a lot of stuff to consider.
There is, and what you just, that's the kind of disinformation people need to watch out for, like that patent to try to reduce the trails for an engine that is completely different than the high bypass turbofan jet engine, which is all commercial aircraft, all military tankers. And that's the sort of disinformation that people put out. And on the disinformation, lots more of that floating around lately, a lot more effort from people on a lot bigger scale, again, to be expected. As we make progress, we should expect that.
Real quick, I would want to inject this. I'm sorry to interrupt you. But,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
But you know what? Turbine engines, which drive the high bypass turbofans, are used in helicopters. So why aren't we seeing all of this massive condensation from helicopters? Number one, because they don't create it. Number two, when you have a plane taking off, it's at its highest power, lowest efficiency point. Where's the massive plumes of 300-foot wide condensation on the ground? You don't.
Exactly.
You see black soot because that's what happens when you reduce kerosene. When you ignite kerosene, you have carbon. You have the black soot left over.
Right. So from every direction, it's the notion that these engines are putting out a natural condensation trail is nonsense, absolute nonsense. So again, I hope people don't react from any particular headline they see. They look deeper. They realize there's a lot of disinformation floating around out there. On the disinformation sites, I encourage people, don't interact. Don't put fuel in the fire. The trolls feed on people's interaction with them. You're not helping. You're never going to convince them. You're wasting your time, and you're actually giving them fuel. So the only people whose cages should be rattled is when you have an official or a quote-unquote expert, a meteorologist or somebody who's lying. Yes, that person should be confronted openly online, and their contacts shared with others to also rattle the cage of such people, but not the disinformation sites and sources, if you will. The purpose of those sites and sources is simply to engage people, to take them out of the fight, to distract them. That's not helping the cause. So, walk away, ignore the disinformation people completely, except those that are professionals in certain posts. That's a different animal completely. So right now we're heading into what will likely be, what has already been, in fact, the warmest start to a year ever recorded by far, even with the temperature falsification. massive El Nino temperatures I mentioned earlier, 90 degrees plus in early May in the eastern Pacific. We are in uncharted territory. As these fires burn, and they're burning all over the globe, and this is, again, people need to look past their window sill, especially people in the eastern U.S., and they need to break out of their paradigm of what the fossil fuel industries and the power structure have convinced them of, and the geoengineers. They need to look at the wider horizon. So as these fires burn, it's depositing a lot of soot on the ice all over Greenland and even places in the Arctic. That soot absorbs much more of the sun's thermal energy on the surface of that ice. And all these processes, these feedback loops, and that's what they are. They're feedback loops. And geoengineering, again, fueling all of them. As geoengineering disrupts the hydrological cycle completely, Australia, by the way, just had its warmest, 2 consecutive back-to-back record-breaking warm years, warmest 2-year period on record, Australia burning to the ground, Australian meteorological department having to change their meteorological color charts to show temperatures in the 130-degree range, never before seen. So as all this happens, and geoengineering, again, changes upper-level wind currents, that changes ocean currents, that's pumping warm water into the Arctic, thawing methane, disrupting the hydrological cycle. Like in our case, in our forest, the rain that does fall, very little rain, instead of 9 wet months a year, now we had 6 weeks. From 9 months to 6 weeks. And the rain that did fall was toxic. The UV is off the charts, thanks to geoengineering. So now the forests around the globe, instead of absorbing carbon, they're emitting carbon. Feedback loop. Warm ocean currents into the Arctic, thawing methane. Methane hits the atmosphere, causes more warming, more methane releases. Feedback loop. There's as many as 30 feedback loops in full swing right now, fueling the planetary meltdown. Everything leads back to geoengineering. Again, we're in dire straits no matter what. And people, I hope, consider that every form of human activity is a form of geoengineering. You have to look at it in the same light. It is. When you put 100 million tons of CO2 in the atmosphere every day, that's a form of geoengineering. It's, again, something the planet would deal with better, much better, without geoengineering, but it's still a form of geoengineering. When you cut down forests, that's a form of geoengineering. So, urban, paving over the natural environment, heat sink, that's a form of geoengineering. But all those things considered, people need to, again, widen their field of vision and realize that so much of what we face is not a this or that equation. It's just like when people ask, well, why are they geoengineering? They want you to give them one answer. Oh, it's just this. That's a lie. It's not just this. It's this, that, the other, and probably 50 other things. You know, you can't put it in one box. So many things you can't put in one box. So we all need to consider that, widen our field of vision so that we're not trying to think dichotomously. And Russ, Greg, again, on the climate engineering, you guys have had that question, right? Why are they doing this? They want one single answer, right?
Definitely, Dane. I mean, you and I have had this conversation, and there's at least 4 or 5 good possibilities as to why they would be geoengineering. And I was going to make the point that
4 or 5 major ones and a whole bunch of other smaller.
Oh, definitely.
But the list is long.
Definitely.
Yeah, the list is long.
Definitely, and I think I just wanted to make the point that we all need to reach out to our family, because I find even within my own family, they try to marginalize me. Reaching out to them to try to help them, and I think we need to marginalize them as individuals and say, reach out, even though it's not politically correct to reach out to our fellow man and tell them that they're being short-sighted. We have to. It's too late not to, because I'd like to think that depopulation is not part of this thing. But again, you and I, and probably many of the listeners, have either heard of the Georgia Guidestones and been there, or been there, and depopulation is probably one of the components. It ties in with GMO food. It ties in with sodium fluoride in the water. It ties in with vaccines. We probably need to care if we're being depopulated. We probably need to take an interest in that. And I'm sick of being marginalized, and I like to turn the tables on my family and people in my circle of influence, and instead of them trying to make me look stupid, maybe it's time to make them look stupid,
Well, you know what? On that point is so important. A lot of people very sheepishly bring up this issue because they've been trained that you're going against the grain and so forth. I hope they shed that lack of confidence and march forward with courage and confidence. Because bottom line is, this issue is the hinge issue for life on Earth, and people should speak confidently about that, knowing they are right, that those who refuse to listen are wrong, and that it's our responsibility to deliver the message in the most acceptable, palatable way we can, the most effective way we can, which includes using the right terms, which includes passing on some credible data. But this should be done with courage, not timidness. And this is again incumbent upon all of us who are awake to this issue. We have a lot of tools at hand, and we have events on the ground right now that, with each passing day, will make it much harder for the power structure to hide what's going on. So even when we all pass on information to deaf ears, if you will, people who want to shrug this off, don't underestimate the ability of that seed to sprout and grow soon, as people cannot stay in their denial, as their bubble is popped. And the depopulation, yes, there's no question, I think, at this point that's a factor. And here's where, again, a lot of dichotomous thinking occurs, where if people want to believe that we could keep reproducing and expanding on this finite planet forever, that's total fantasy. It's denial. But somehow, I know this has happened in my case, when I state that the planet can't support the population that's here, then suddenly I'm considered as agreeing with the power structure. How is that agreeing? Because I make a statement of fact. It doesn't make me agree with the power structure. If there's an overpopulation issue, perhaps those at the top who have helped create this mess should be the first to walk the plank.
There's no overpopulation.
Pardon me? Who said that?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't even know I was live. This is Dave from Connecticut. I don't think there's an overpopulation on the planet. If you gave every family a quarter of an acre, they'd fit in the size of Texas.
Dave, there's where I would encourage you to do some more research, and I know what I'm talking about in this issue. If you research indigenous populations without fossil fuels, you cannot possibly, just because you can line everybody up, with all due respect to you, sir, because you can line everybody up in a certain physical space, and they can all have a certain part of that physical space, does not mean they can survive. And I would challenge you to find any credible study on this issue that would back up what you're saying. In fact, and
you know what? That is not why I called in. I'll retract that statement. I don't think that was the major issue. But without
okay, I want you to finish your statement, and let me just finish my thought, and then you can press on. My only point is this: that we need to, if for example, if Al Gore said the world was round, we should not take up the position that it's flat because we don't like Al Gore. If those in power point out that the planet can't sustain a certain population, and that's a fact, it doesn't mean we agree with them or their policies. It simply means that we acknowledge certain realities. So that being said, we all need to look at the wider picture. So sorry, Dave, go ahead. Continue your thought.
Yeah, no problem. I actually called on. I want to make a couple of points and ask the question. The discussion of if they're spraying, I mean, that's off the table. It's obviously clear. The question that can be debated forever is why are they spraying? And, there's some very solid evidence there, but that's one that can continue. Every morning, I live in Connecticut, every morning I wake up, there's gigantic trails. They lay the fattest trails in the morning that spread out, and then they just keep spraying all day, not as obviously. I don't know if they do that everywhere, or, it's just so obvious to me, it's mind-boggling. The question I had was, you talked about it last week for a little bit, Jesse Ventura's, video where he just totally, looks like he said maybe possibly threatened, or do you think it's possible that somebody got to him and said, hey, this is why we're doing it, and it's going to save the world, and if you don't back us up on it, there's going to be a big debate, and Jesse bought into it?
Okay, and to answer that question, first to go back on the why are they spraying, again, people need to understand there's a lot of answers to that question, not just one.
Correct.
Our whole society is trained to think good or evil, light or dark, this way or that way. It's a lot of things, so people need to break out of that paradigm. Next, on Jesse Ventura, I think what you stated is a possibility, and perhaps in this case, again, both possibilities. I think he has political ambitions, and he simply is preparing for to implement his political ambitions, which may be a run for office again or something. And so there's probably a lot of reasons why he simply threw us under the bus on this. He literally has.
Did he respond to your letter that you wrote a good article on it? Has he responded to anybody? I haven't heard any feedback.
No. And if anybody looked at what I put out, and you see the damning statements, which I'm grateful to a Pacifica radio announcer who I know who passed on that audio for any of those who heard it, of Ken Caldera, Jesse's so-called expert witness, stating what he did at Lawrence Livermore Laboratories while employed there was to sit around thinking of ways to detonate hydrogen bombs in order to create tidal waves to inundate cities. Well, we've seen plenty of that lately, haven't we? And also how to seed clouds with pathogens to sicken populations. And by the way, on that note, one thing I forgot to mention on my initial update, Ebola now spreading out of control, and I quote, out of control according to health officials in Africa. Anybody who knows about Ebola understands the threat. That appears to be an engineered pathogen. I've actually read books on the subject, and again, this is the kind of thing Caldera admitted on the record that he was involved with think tanks on. How in the world could Jesse Ventura have a guy like Ken Caldera who doesn't have the spine to even look you in the eye, and I know because I've met him face to face, would not look me in the eye, and
he wouldn't look at the camera.
No, he wouldn't. He can't even look at the camera, let alone another man in the eye. He can't do it. He can't do it because he's as spineless as they come. And I hope people rattle the cage of Ken Caldera. He's sensitive to that. He likes to think he's something other than what he is. Ebola, back to that point, again, that's what we face with climate engineering from so many directions. It is a very direct and immediate threat to all life on Earth, tearing the biosphere apart from top to bottom and being used as a mechanism to launch pathogens. And again, Ebola kills 90%. 90% mortality rate. It literally dissolves your internal organs. In autopsy reports from people who've had Ebola, even autopsies done within hours after their mortality, their insides look like they've been dead for a week. That's how Ebola is a very, very insidious and horribly lethal disease. So that's spreading right now. There's an emergency meeting of 11 countries right now on that issue. Bottom line is, again, climate engineering and that mechanism to disperse pathogens, extremely direct threat on all of us. So
Dane, the mechanism is already in place, and one thing that I would table right now is that I've seen instances in Maine where they spray a particular type of trail that has a particular odor to it that gives me a sore throat within like 30 minutes. If they spray that 3 days or more in a row, everybody's sick. Everybody's got flu symptoms, everybody's sick, and I've seen it go for 3 weeks. They shut down schools. So
at best, we're being slow-killed right now, at best, in addition to everything else, killing the environment. So bottom line is, this is the logical priority issue for all of us. Whatever our disagreements are, we need to get past them and focus on the fact that climate engineering is killing us all, period. If it doesn't stop, it's game over, period. So I hope everybody uses the tools they have before we run out of time. George Barnes' film, look up, new updated version. George has done a lot for the cause. His app is certainly a great tool. We'll try to continue to update data on GeoEngineering Watch as fast as it comes in. It's coming in so fast I can't keep up, frankly, but we'll try, and I encourage everybody to, again, educate yourself. Don't stay locked in your paradigm. Adjust your compass heading. Relook at the horizon. Defog your lenses so you can see with a new perspective, a perspective that doesn't have filters. We all need to do that. So, Greg, very grateful for you joining us here. I look forward to having you back perhaps next week. Dave, thanks for calling in. Russ or Greg, any final statements?
I just wanted to say one thing, Dane. We need to reach out to all our Christian friends and family members also and remind them of the fact that we are our brother's keeper. As you well know, I'm building a cabin up here in the mountains, and I ran into a guy the other day that I introduced to this topic, and he reminded me of that fact, and I think it's a great point. We are supposed to be our brother's keeper, and so you need to reach out to your brother and take good care of him and educate him as fast as you can.
Absolutely, Greg. Thank you. Thank you, Greg. That's a great point. This is Russ Dane on behalf of UCY Radio and GeoEngineering Watch Radio. We're here every Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 12 noon Pacific Time. Join us at ucy.tv. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Greg.
Yep.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Smile.